carrying precious cargo.
He thinks he's bringing in a 747.
All right, let's get to work.
When the six-pack starts to roll, things start happening. Life has much more gusto, that's for sure.
Service for 6. And a little music to dine by.
Good times start brewing when you open a Schlitz. It pulls together with that great taste of gusto. Good times start brewing when you open a Schlitz. It brings the guys together again.
Good friends and a good beer don't come easy. So when you find them, you hold on to them. And since 1849, more men have been holding on to the gusto of Schlitz than any other beer.
Hey, come on, guys. It's 2 minutes till game time.
Thanks. This could be the best game we ever missed.
Hey, a little gusto is a musto.
Good times start brewing when you open a Schlitz.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flaco's Corner. I am your host, El Flaco Loco. Now, we have a very special show planned today. It's a one-on-one interview with the one, the only Big Ugly J.D. Bishop. Now, it's not just any interview, it's also a celebration. That's right. Today is the Big Ugly's birthday. So get those drinks ready. Get the shot glass, get the beer, get the wine, get whatever. We're going to raise a glass and toast the Big Ugly on his birthday. That interview is coming up right now after this word from our sponsor.
Looking for a better set of wheels.
I will stand upon my head to make a deal. I will stand upon my head till my ears are turned red. Go see cow, go see cow, go see cow.
Hey, we're trying to win a trip to the Super Bowl, and we've got to sell 10 jillion trucks to do it, and here's the way we're going to do it. Look over here. I'll sell you this brand new Ranger pickup for $1. $1 over the factory invoice, or listen to this, I'll lease it to you for no money down and $118 a month. How about a big truck, a half-ton pickup? Here's a 1984 Ford, a half-ton pickup. $1, $1 over the factory invoice, or I'll lease it to you for no money down, $150 a month. How about a Bronco 2, a big four-wheel drive Bronco 2? Sell it to you for $1, $1 over the factory invoice, or I'll lease it to you no money down, $193 a month. Hey, we're going to win that Super Bowl contest, and you're going to be the big winner. You're going to get a heck of a deal. Worthington Ford, Federal Way, the only way, open to midnight every day.
I was asking, what are you drinking for your birthday shot?
Nothing but the best.
All right, and I was telling everyone I'm going to do the Clarksburg Wine Company. There's a 2013 Petite Syrah. Ugly, what are your thoughts?
This is a perfect white person drink right there. So you should feel at home.
If it's the Big Ugly, I'm going the tequila route, and so I'm going to actually use the Scotch of tequilas, which is mezcal, a little smokier. All right, here we go. This is a shoot right here. This isn't a work shot. This isn't like when Flaco did the tequila bombs in ISW. Here we go.
Oh.
All right. Well, one more time. Hey, I don't mind doing another shot for you, boss. Happy birthday. All right, ready for take 3?
No shit. Come on, I gotta.
All right. So let's go. The first question that I want to know is, I've told the story often of the first time I was ever exposed to professional wrestling. I was about maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I grew up in a household where boxing. Dad was a big boxing fan, so I remember seeing like Muhammad Ali fights. This is before pay-per-view, so I'd see Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, Pete Ranzani, Pepino Cuevas, and Carlos Zarate, and all these great boxers. And then I remember watching TV and seeing what I thought was a boxing ring, but these guys don't have gloves. They're slapping each other. They're kicking each other. They're rolling around and wondering what the hell that is. And then being captivated when I saw a masked wrestler fly into the ring, and it was Emil Mascaras. So that was my introduction to the world of professional wrestling. What was your introduction to professional wrestling?
First time I actually saw wrestling was live at the Memorial here in Sacramento.
Okay.
My father was out of my life from the time I was really little till I believe it was like 6th grade. And I remember he came over on a Christmas and brought me a bike, and I was really excited. Didn't even know the man really. But he wanted to get back in my life, so my mom felt she owed it to him to let him, see his son. And he would come down on the weekends, and we would hang out a little bit and go visit my family that I really hadn't seen much of. And the first time he asked me to come up for a weekend to Sacramento, because we were from Tracy, California, he brought me to professional wrestling. I mean, I'm assuming didn't know really what it was like to be a dad, and wanted to do what his father did, which was take him to wrestling. And we went to the auditorium and I watched wrestling, and I was the same way too. I came in and seen the ring, and I was thinking, oh man, these guys are good. This is gonna be boxing, which I had grew up a lot watching, being Hispanic, as we all did, watching boxing. Yeah. I was amazed when they came out and there was music and these guys weren't wearing gloves. And it was the first match I saw was the Wild Simones and the Moondogs. And I was like, this isn't boxing, man. These guys are really fighting. They have no gloves on. They're just trying to kill each other. And my best memory of that was Rocky Johnson wrestled Roddy Piper. And I just remembered how much of an asshole Piper was. But I like, man, this guy's hilarious. Like, dude, people hate him, and he's having a great time. And just watching the athleticism, and then finally at the last match, Hogan came out. It's Hogan and Big John Studd. And I sat there and watched Hogan do nothing. But God, people loved him. Like, it was just like a God had walked in the room, when he was in there. And I was totally bought in. Like, I went back home, and everything in my life was wrestling. I was like telling my mom, oh, man, you got to see this stuff. These guys are really fighting. And you couldn't tell me it was not real, or whatever the gimmick people say now about it. I was just totally sold on it. Any chance I could get, I watched it. And when they bring it back here every month, that would be the weekend my dad would take me up to watch wrestling. And then roller derby was another big thing.
That's kind of funny that you bring up Roddy Piper. That was your impression of him, and then fast forward years and years later, your connection with him, which maybe we'll touch base on that in this interview. Maybe that's for another interview in the future. So that's kind of cool. So wrestling was a way for you and your father to connect.
Yeah, definitely. It was probably, like I said, not to get too much into my history of my family, but a lot of the males in my life weren't always the best role models. Whether it's my father, my brother, they weren't always the best role models. So we bonded on different things, and I think the wrestling thing was the way me and my father bonded. He wasn't much of a football player, wasn't much into anything other than doing stuff he probably should have been doing, just like my older brother.
Yeah,
I wasn't about those things. My mom made a point to make me not about those things. Excuse me. And as I got older and started being drawn to some of those things, she had to come up here and move with my dad, which is probably the best decision ever in my life, because those guys I hung out with back then, two of my cousins and two of my buddies at the time, are either not with us anymore or locked up. So it's good that I didn't want to come at first, but it was a smart decision and changed the rest of my life. From then on, I became about sports, and wrestling was always something I wanted to do, but never thought I could because I didn't know nothing about it. It was just something I watched on Saturdays. And then he saw how into it I was, and started saying, hey, there's this magazine that talks about wrestling. And I was like, oh, well, let's go buy it. So then every month I'd go and buy Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I remember on the back page was the Four Horsemen.
Yeah.
And I didn't know they were because I only got to watch WWE or WWF.
Yeah.
We didn't, kids don't understand now because we didn't have internet and I didn't have fucking cable.
Yeah.
We had to go up and change the channel on the TV back in the day, so we got channel 31 where WWE came on. So I didn't even know there was other wrestling other than WWF. And he started buying me these magazines, and I started reading about this stuff and learning who these guys were. And I remember I bought a Four Horsemen sweater, that said Diamonds Are Forever, so the Horsemen. And it was because it was the one Ric Flair had, who I was a huge fan of. And then later, as I got older, my sister actually ended up dating a guy who was related to Yokozuna. And he was really into wrestling, obviously because his family was. So he got me really into the NWA and other wrestling, like in Japan and all these other places. And then I just kind of consumed my life, was wrestling, and
now was your mom, what was your mom's take on wrestling?
You know, as long as I wasn't doing nothing stupid, she was. I mean, obviously, she wasn't a fan. You know, she was. You know, she's just a mom. She wanted, you know, nothing but the best for her kid, but she didn't like wrestling. And, you know, I think there was a lot of animosity with her and my father. So I think anything that I did about wrestling or talked about wrestling obviously was related to him. So I don't think she was really into it because of they had. So I just think that it left a bad taste in her mouth when I would talk so highly of wrestling and my dad, because that's not good for them, you know.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, you know, all that stuff that happened between them in the past, I didn't know nothing about it till later on, you know. But, you know, it's just I don't think she was really into it. But as I started wrestling, she was totally 100%. To this day, she's totally 100% behind me.
That's kind of interesting how wrestling was a catalyst to you reconnecting with your father, and then eventually became something that both your mother and your father could both connect on. You know, seeing their son evolve and become and advance through the world of pro wrestling. But you bring up the whole, like, we never saw NWA. There's this pre-internet, and I remember the only wrestling I could ever see was every now and then WWF was on TV, or if you found if you were on the Spanish speaking channel at the right time, you'd find Lucha Libre. But NWA, World Class, you never saw any of that. And so I would see like pictures of Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and the Von Erichs on these magazines. And there was this mystique about them. It was like this wrestling that I couldn't see. And so it drew me to that type of wrestling. What was it about the wrestling you couldn't see that attracted you? What was it about the Horsemen? What was it about Ric Flair?
You know, probably because, you know, they were just doing something that, like, something really, really violent. Because I was brought up in a violent community when I was younger. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of gang things going on, which a lot of people don't know about my history from growing up in Tracy, California, with my brother. Something my brother was involved in. You know, drive-by shootings was a thing in our neighborhood before it was a thing on TV. You know, it was, you hear gunshots, people would get shot at the park, you know, and it was just another day. I remember, because who my brother was in the gang he was in, like, people would stand around him on the handball courts, and if you wanted to talk to him, you had to walk through them, and it was just like this whole big thing that was just second nature to us. We just grew up around this, and I think that, like, violence and that power allured me to wrestling, because those guys I perceived as like those guys. They're like as powerful, and that things people like looked up to them, to wrestlers, and you had this audience full of people just cheering for these guys. And I think that kind of related me to where I was growing up, with guys being in power, and just being somewhat of I guess, like, just well known, and then of course the athleticism. You know, just. You know, here are these guys wrestling in front of thousands of people and just doing these crazy characters, and it just seemed like, you know, I could still do a lot of, you know, which I thought was, you know, was a real fight, you know, fighting stuff, and make a lot of money in front of a lot of people and not get in trouble for it, you know, and just that whole allure, man, of just the storylines I were bought into, and, you know, I had my favorite guys, and I was just bought into everything. It was a way to escape, you know, from everything that was going on. And when I moved out here to Sacramento, we lived out in the country. Like, you've been to my old dad's house. We used to my ring. There wasn't shit out there. It was like a fucking road with nothing. Now there's a school out there and freaking Starbucks and everything, Target. But back then, it was like
back then the only thing that was out there was the Pheasant Club.
Yeah, and if
that's all that was out there.
11, like, if you didn't stop at 7-Eleven, you didn't go to the store. Like, when you got out there, like, you know, we used to call it, I'm going to go to town today, you know, not like I'm going to run to the store, because you had to go to town. It was like 4 miles away. Yeah. So I would just sit there and get at home, and I couldn't get in trouble because there was nothing to do out there, and just get wrapped up into wrestling. It was my escape, and it was just what I did, you know. And I remember I had the same routine every Saturday. My parents would take me to karate. My dad would take me to karate. I'd spend 4 hours, even when, like, I was a white belt, I'd stay till the end, because he would go home and pick up my stepmom, and then they'd pick me up. We'd go to Sidewalk Pizza. We'd get food, and there was a video store next door. And there was either the first War Games, or there was Starcade, and there was a fucking another wrestling. It was like a movie, but it was a really cheap made one. I forgot what it was called, Masters of Mayhem or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And I would get one of those 3, and then they'd take me home, and they would go back to the bar, and I would pretty much stay at my house. And at 3 o'clock, I'd watch the Saturday matinee with martial arts.
Yeah.
And then I watched they got home. And
on Channel 31. Channel 31.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. With Bruce Lee, not Bruce Lee, Bruce Lee, L-I. Yeah.
Whatever martial arts movie they had, I would watch that, and I kind of in my own world out there. You know, I'd go out, and I remember we had this tree outside where I set up like a bag, you know, because I was really into karate too, and I would kick it, punch, I would throw drop kicks on it, and, you know, and I remember they would be gone for hours at a time, so I'd take all the pillows off the fucking couches and lay them on the floor and dropping elbows and, you know, doing my own matches and stuff before backyard wrestling was cool. I was doing all that stuff, you know, and it was kind of like my babysitter at the time was pro wrestling, you know, and I always gravitated to that more than anything else in my life, football, karate, or anything, you know.
Now, and you mentioned some of these movies like, you know, like I Like to Hurt People, Body Slam, and all these other great wrestling movies of the 80s. Maybe that's going to be another interview of you and I watching one of these and critiquing it. So in high school, I remember when I was in high school, now I am just a little bit older than you, considerably older. So, but I remember in high school, there was only a small group of us who were into wrestling. And it was kind of one of those things where it was like, you like wrestling too? Oh my God. And it was like the secret society. It wasn't as out there. And this is pre-Attitude Era. So where everyone's wearing an Austin 316 shirt. It's like, if you found someone else who liked wrestling, it was like your own little secret society. What was your high school experience like in terms of professional wrestling?
It was pretty much the same thing. You had your few WWF fans. Mm-hmm. And I had one other guy who was the quarterback on my team who who knew what the NWA was. And he was a Road Warrior fan, just like I was. Yeah. So we would always say we're Hawk and Animal, and I had the Animal mohawk. He had the gimmick, the reverse mohawk, and we thought we were the Road Warriors, and that's what we would tell.
No way.
And that's the way we bond. Besides, he was my quarterback, and I blocked for it. You know, he was the only other guy that knew what the hell NWA was. You know, did you
guys ever paint up your faces?
No, he was. You know, see, that's the thing, like. He was a quarterback, so he got to do whatever the fuck he wanted to. I was a line coach, and my line coach would let me do shit. Like my line coach was an asshole. But yeah, I wanted to wear and he wasn't having it. So, but yeah, he wore the fucking hawk paint and everything, and he didn't let me. But that's the only other guy I knew around who knew what the NWA was. Everybody else was like WWE. The small group that there was. You know.
Now after high school, correct me if I'm wrong. After high school, then you went into the service.
Well, there was a brief stint. Mm-hmm. I'd say a couple months. I was supposed to go play for Humboldt State.
No way. In football.
Yeah. And I had because you know this was before all these recruiting fucking medias you can go to and you know who players are. Yeah. I went to summer camp and got in some trouble there. Mm-hmm. And they were going to reduce my offer to something. My dad was
wait. You got in trouble in Humboldt?
Yeah, and it wasn't for smoking weed.
I was going to say, no guesses for what. All right. But you had an opportunity to play for Humboldt. What position?
Well, that's part of the issue because when I played offensive line. I was offensive guard, defensive end. Mm-hmm. And we were in the Optimist game, which I'm the only lineman in our from my school's history to make it. And I was all first Metro team and all stuff. When we went to the Optimist game, they announced all the linemen, and I was not only the smallest guy from the linemen, the only guy lighter than me was the kicker, and he was 6'2". So I was the smallest guy on the team.
So what about how big were you back then?
When my senior year, I ended my senior year because it was right before wrestling season, and I only wrestled in high school because I thought it was close to pro wrestling. Yeah. So I weighed 165, and I was 5'8".
You're kidding.
Yeah, and so like.
I'm my current state. I'm bigger than you were in high school. That blows me away to think that you were smaller than I am.
The guy who brought me on coaching, he was. I had been coaching with him for years, even until just recently. He would tell everybody the same story. He's like, he was a 105-pound lineman who was all city. You know, he's like, and so size doesn't mean shit. And I mean, I have a picture from that day with one of my buddies who was like 185, and next to me, and you would think like I was his son because I was just so small.
Now you did high school wrestling as well?
Yeah, I wrestled in high school. For my senior year was the only year I ever wrestled. Okay. because it was brand new to our school. You know, we only had really like 6 major sports in our school. And of course we're a Hispanic community, so soccer was our big thing, and I didn't play soccer.
Yeah.
And then it was track, so I did track, but wrestling came on and I was like, oh, hell yeah, I want to do this.
Yeah.
But, you know, anybody who plays football, you know, you're trying to put weight on, and then wrestling, you got to take it off.
Yeah.
I had enough balls that there was 2 other guys in my weight class, and neither one of them wanted to wrestle up. So I was 165, 160 because wrestling, they conditioned the hell out of us.
Mm-hmm.
I was wrestling 189s.
Wow.
Because the guys didn't want to wrestle up, you know, and I was like, fuck it, I don't care. I'll wrestle anybody. So, you know, I was getting beat a lot because I'm wrestling guys, you know, 20 pounds bigger than me. But, you know, the coach wanted points, you know, because if you don't have an open, you get points. And I won a couple matches, but nothing incredible. Like I thought, I'm a piece of shit. I can't beat anybody.
Yeah,
but
I think in high school, they wanted, my freshman year, they wanted me to join the high school wrestling team because they didn't have anyone to wrestle in the 90-pound division. And I was freshman year, I was probably like 5'1" and maybe like 89, 90 pounds.
Yeah.
And so they're like, hey, come on out, just try out. You'll be a tiger on the mat and whatever. I'm like, I don't know. And so they put me, so I show up after school and I'm on the mat, and they kind of tell me how to stand, and the person I'm up against is like 100 pounds or whatever. And he just shoots in like he's going for a fireman's carry, but he ends up uppercutting me right in the balls. And I didn't know how to do a Ric Flair bump, but I'm pretty sure I did a Ric Flair bump, the face bump right then and there. So at that point, I just look up, and I just remember vividly the wrestling coach looking down at me saying, "You okay? You're okay. Come on." I'm like, I don't want to do this, coach. I don't want to do this. And then I walked away. And then, you know, I joined performing arts, and I was in the theater group, but which then again led me to pro wrestling.
Hey, it all revolves around the same shit. You know, I wish I would have known that, because when I started wrestling, is when I first started talking to the people from Humboldt.
Oh,
and
really?
a couple of small colleges, and the coach was telling me, don't wrestle. He's like, you're just going to keep losing weight.
Yeah.
And at the time, the B had me at 179, 180 pounds, which, fuck, I wasn't that since I was like in 5th grade. You know, I was never that. Always a small guy, you know.
No.
And he's like, you're just losing weight. Don't wrestle because you're going to lose weight. And I'm thinking, oh, come on, man. I'm just that, you know, blah, blah. And then I got the summer camp, and he's like, God damn, you're fucking tiny.
Yeah.
It's like, you're a fucking little kid. So then they moved me to other positions, and it just wasn't working out. And I guess I got to do.
When did you decide to look into professional wrestling training?
Well, I actually, my senior year, after that, not me, my senior year, was after that had happened at Humboldt State that summer. I had heard about Woody Farmer running a school in the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. So I went down there, and I was all ready to sign up. I remember Mae Young was one of the trainers there. And I was thinking, oh my God, dude, that's fucking Mae Young. She's like a legend, and she was beating the shit. I was thinking, fuck, dude, this is crazy. I was like so excited. I was going to be in the wrestling business, yada yada. And I was like, well, you know, I got to get some money together, blah blah. Anyways, a month later, he shut down. The school shut down.
Oh wow.
I was like, fuck. Well, you know, I have no direction in life, so I should probably, instead of just drinking every night, do something. So I went to the military. I was in there for about 1.5 years. Got a medical doubt because my knees were so bad, and I was already at my duty station. So it was like my unit had shipped out. They were already fucking overseas, and I was answering phones for 6 months. And they asked me, "Hey, do you want to get the surgeon here? Do you want to go do it out on the civilian?" I was like, "Give me the fuck out of here, dude. I'm tired of being here." Like, you know. So I came back home and kind of was doing nothing with myself, and ended up getting this chick pregnant, and. I remember I still had wanted to go to school, and I got a brochure because the original brochure I ever got in my life was from the Malenko school, and that was the original. But that was when I was in high school.
Yeah. And where'd you get that from?
I was researching in sports wrestling. Yeah. Pro wrestling, and they had an ad for Boris Malenko school in Pensacola. And I was like, holy shit, dude, Boris Malenko? I was like, fuck, I'm going to be hella good. Like, you know, because a lot of people don't know who Boris is other than Steve's dad. But the dude was like legit. Like, he was a legit shooter, you know. So I was all excited. But then, you know, same thing, you know, by the time I graduated, he had shut down, you know. And so I decided that I was going to try to find another school. I found APW in Hayward.
Yeah.
And when I had this brochure and I put it up on my wall, but then when I got the young lady I was with, well, actually my kid's mom pregnant, I had to get a job. And so I kind of was like, I just got to put this on the back burner. And I ended up working at a boys ranch in Nevada. And I would go up there for a week and come back for a week. And I remember I did that for about 6 months. And then she's like, hey, either take this brochure off the wall or go train. So I contacted them and I was like, hey, here's my situation. You know, I'm gone for a week at a time. And, you know, I can try to make it back for those weeks when I'm working. I'll take vacation, whatever I got to do. And then, of course, Roland brought me in. And he's like, well, if that's what you want, to give it a shot. No problem. Pay me your deposit. So I paid my deposit. I remember the weeks I would go up on a Wednesday and come back on a Wednesday. So Wednesday and Sundays we're training at APW. I would come late to my work. I would go to train in Hayward, drive straight through to fucking Shores, Nevada, which is 5 hours away, work until Sunday, leave Sunday morning, come back and train, and then go back there till Wednesday. Wednesday, come back to train, and then go home for the week. Wow. You know, I did that for almost a year. And then finally they shut down the campus there because that's the whole big old thing with the state was pulling out kids in detention facilities. So I got laid off, and then I would just basically go into APW for about another 6 or 7 months. Yeah. Finally left there, and then went to NAW. But yeah, so that's really how I started training, was just I was always wanted to, and my wife finally told me, hey, get to fucking do it or take it down. So I just said, I'm gonna give it a shot.
Who were your trainers when you were at the garage?
When I was there, obviously Roland was the owner. Mike Modest was the head trainer. Okay. And Donovan Morgan once in a while. Mm-hmm. And then Vinny Massaro, who was younger than me. He was like 18-year-old kid. Yeah. And was one of the co-trainers. Robert Thompson wasn't around as much, which I wish he would have, because I was always a fan of Robert Thompson. Mm-hmm. But and then once in a while, one of the other vets would come in and work with us. But it was generally Modest was the one running camps and running everything for us. And then Frank Murdoch kind of later on took over the role as a trainer and taught us everything. But I spent a lot of time, because the original camp I started with was me and Bison and Jardy Franz. We're all in the same camp together. Okay. And then the Blanchards came in like the next camp after. But I would spend a lot of time with them, with Modest and Bison after training, because I'd have to miss because of work and stuff. Yeah. Going over stuff, basics and fundamentals and yada, yada, yada. And Mike would just work me, man. Just fucking stretch me, throw me around, show me some stuff. And I don't know, Mike really liked me, and I liked Mike. He was cool. He's the head guy. And this was like halfway through my trainings when he won the belt with WCW over Prince IK on that cruiserweight belt. So I was thinking, shit, dude, this guy's like legit. He just won the belt on TV, man. Like, I'm gonna stick it out here, And then they all left, and
Yeah. What was Bison like in the training?
Honestly, man, like when you see Bison, like especially in Japan, and you're thinking, man, this dude will fucking eat your heart out. Mm-hmm. When you see him outside of there, you're like, this is the nicest dude in the fucking world. He'd come to camp. This was after like he already had passed beginners and semi-pro. He'd come to camp and he'd have this little fucking dog. No shit. It was fucking like, a soda can size. And he'd carry it on his shoulder. Like, he was just the fucking nicest guy in the world. Wouldn't talk much. He was just a fucking sweetheart. And I'd never say that about a guy who was 325 with a mohawk. Yeah. But God, he was just the sweetest, nicest fucking guy in the world, you know, and would definitely go out of his way to make sure you were cool. Just the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah, I think, and thanks to you and the working relationship with Brian Ward, I had the opportunity to be on a few shows with Bison. And man, what a sweetheart of a guy. Yeah. Super nice and just like humble. And I'm like, you've been everywhere. Why are you being humble around me? You're Bison Smith.
I was working an angle it was the Cartel, which is me and Vinny Massaro versus Team Chaos, which it was Bison and I forgot who he was with. I think it was like BJ Whitmore or one of the guys, a fucking Nigel McGinn. He had somebody good with him where I was like, I have no business being in this feud. But so we did an angle of Vinny's working him and he poked his head. I came in and it was supposed to hit him with a chair in the head. Mm-hmm. So I came in and fucking blasted him, boom. And then, Mom went home, went in the back, and he walked out. I was like, hey, bro, you okay? And he shook my hand. He's like, oh, yeah, man. He's like, yeah. Hey, bro, you could have hit me harder. And I was like, no, I couldn't have. I swung as hard as I fucking could, dude. The chair's broken. And I was like, Mark, there's no way I could have hit you any harder. He's like, oh, okay.
And here is he thinks you're going light on him to take care of him.
Either I need to work on my swing or the chair was a pillow. Like, he was just like I said.
Let's talk about your time going to work for Brian Ward. What was that like?
it was weird because I had left APW, and I pretty much went home, and I was rehabbing my back and just doing nothing. I kind of gave up on the wrestling thing, a friend of mine, Manny Galindo, who was training at APW a little before me, said, "Hey, I've got this guy in Fresno who's a trainer, and he's running a school. Would you think about going?" And I was like, "Yeah, let me go down there and meet him." So I went down there and met him. He's a cool guy, nice. And I remember the biggest lesson I've learned from anybody in wrestling was him. And he told me, he's like, "Well, it's going to cost $2,000 to train here." And I was like, "Man, I just paid for APW, and I'm fucking like, I got a kid on the way, and dude, I don't have $2,000.
Yeah."
He's like, "Well, you have to have it by Tuesday, or this camp's going to start. You're not going to be able to do it." I was like, "Fuck." I was like, "Hey, well, can you work with me? Like, can I do payments?" He's like, "No, it's $2,000." He's like, "If you want it bad enough, you'll find it. You'll find it." And I fucking found the money by Tuesday, and signed up. And he's like, he watched me and Manny work a little bit. And at this time, Professor Poindexter, Scotty Love, was just starting out in the business and trying to get trained too. And so me and Manny did a camp for him. It was about actually 3 weeks we trained before he officially started camp. And he's like, "Hey, I got this idea for a character. If you do the character for me, I'll give you back. Because I'll buy the gear and everything for you." And I was like, "Okay, what's the character?" Because I was like, "I just don't want to pay for gear."
Yeah.
Oh, it's called El Chupacabra. And I was like, "Fucking whatever." And I guess at the time, because he was a big X-Files guy, they had just done an episode in Bakersfield where there's a Chupacabra there or something. So I had to research what the fuck it was, because I didn't know. I knew it was a Mexican. I knew it was like, like Gooey and stuff like that. Like it was like a Mexican folklore, or Spanish folklore. So I looked it up, and he had another guy with him that was kind of like his second, and he wanted me to come out eating a fucking chicken and shit, like a rubber chicken or something. And I was like, "Man, I'm fucking doing that, dude. Like, I want to get in this business, but that ain't going to happen, dude." So I bought a mask that was mouth was covered. From, I think it was Agent
Wait, so the mask that you wore, the mouth was covered specifically so you wouldn't have to eat a chicken?
Yeah, because I don't want to come out chewing on a fucking rubber chicken. Like, I was like, I'm not going to fucking do that. I was thinking, so I bought the mask. It was called Mantis. The mask was called Mantis.
I remember. Yeah.
And I threw dreadlocks on it just because the Chupacabra had those things, and he came in and he's like, "Oh man, that mask is awesome, blah, blah." I go, "Yeah, I know, man. It just fit the character." I go, "But it has no mouth, so I can't do the chicken thing." And he's like, "Oh, fuck. Well, maybe we'll do something." I go, "But it's better this way." And so I was ended up buying time, and then, fucking getting another mask made and everything. But yeah, that's the only reason why I had that mask, and I fucking hated it because I couldn't breathe.
Yeah. Now, were you ever, because that's kind of funny, because the first time, and I don't want to fast forward too much, but the first time I ever saw you wrestle was under a mask. And it was as a Chupacabra, not the Mexican werewolf, not Elite.
Yeah, no, that was
the original Chupacabra.
The original Chupacabra.
Were you ever a fan of Lucha Libre? Were you ever into that?
Not really. I mean, because I had never really been exposed to it much. And as I started getting into wrestling, I started learning more about it. And I started, like, growing up, it was, like I said, I was never really into professional wrestling until like 6th to 7th grade. And then it was just what I was exposed to was WWE. And yeah, I would come on channel, I think it was 19 or something at the time. And I would watch, because it was wrestling, but I couldn't speak Spanish. I didn't know what the fuck these guys were saying or what they were, who they were. I knew some of the masks and what they looked like, but my biggest exposure was watching Japan wrestling and seeing some of those guys cross over. And then, just every once in a while, you'd see a Mil Mascaras on WWE or something like that. To me, like at the time, Mexican wrestling was fucking Tito Santana. That's the best Mexican wrestling right there. It's just like American. I didn't realize there was a whole different fucking genre of wrestling out there. And then once I really started breaking into business and doing the character, I really started researching and watching it. And there was a lot of stuff I didn't like at first, because a lot of the stuff I was getting was from was it J Tapes was one of them, and then there was another website that did tapes, and it was just like flea market shows. And a lot of those flea market shows are just guys who are breaking in. Then I started watching AAA and CMLL and a lot of this other stuff. And I remember what really changed my mind on the whole thing is I watched Super 8, so Super J Cup, and it had Silver King and fucking who else? Eddie Guerrero was in there, and all these guys who were like crossover guys, or just fucking in Japan or Mexico and Japan. I was like, holy shit, dude, there's a whole nother world of wrestling that I haven't been exposed to. And then I really started getting into watching tapes and films and stuff. And I became kind of immersed in the Lucha Libre world because I was doing the character a lot.
Yeah.
I wanted to do it justice. I didn't like the fact that I was labeled as a Lucha Libre guy, but I didn't know how to to this day, I can kind of do some Lucha stuff, but I would never say I'm a Lucha wrestler because that's a whole nother fucking world of shit. I'm not one of these guys who, when I train people, oh yeah, you look Mexican, I'm gonna throw a mask on you. We're gonna say you're a luchador, because it's not unless you've been trained in Lucha Libre, you don't know what it's about. So I kind of know, like I wrestled a lot of guys like Damien and fucking, a lot of those guys I wrestled and stuff, but I'm not enough to say I'm a trained luchador because I'm just not. Not. I respect it that much that I'm not going to say I am.
I think it's so interesting because what the Big Ugly J.D. Bishop is and what the original Chupacabra are completely different. And so it's interesting that like your initial break into independent wrestling was as a masked wrestler. So what did you have to do differently? How did that change your perception of wrestling, having to put on a mask where people don't see your face, where Big Ugly, that's, your face when you're coming out, even when you're wearing your sunglasses, your promos, your faces during the match, that's such a big part of who you are. What was the biggest challenge being a wrestler, especially with the original Chupacabra mask, which was eyes covered, mouth covered? We didn't see anything.
Yeah, and the funny thing is the whole basis of the original Chupacabra character, it wasn't even a lucha character. Brian Ward had me as just the fucking Chupacabra. It wasn't supposed to be a Mexican wrestler or nothing. It was just a Chupacabra character. And it actually allowed me to be comfortable because I didn't have to make facial expressions. I didn't have to talk. I could just wrestle, and so it actually like helped me out to act in a certain way because I wasn't, when you first get into wrestling, and not everybody's like you that just fucking takes to this shit like a fish to water and can make an ass of themselves. Most guys are scared to make an ass of themselves or scared that they will make an ass of themselves. So then they just sit there Dean Malenko style and don't do nothing. With the Chupacabra character, I was like, I can try whatever the fuck I want. When I leave, nobody's going to know it's me. Like they're not going to know that was the guy in the mask that was an owl or stupid or whatever, So I was out there acting a fool,
And like I said, first time I ever saw you was as Chupacabra, and then later on, Big Ugly was on the show. I'm telling you, I did not put the two together. I actually thought the original Chupacabra was Bulldog Brian Raymond.
A lot of people said that there were shows where I heard people in the audience, because a lot of my family and friends were out there, would be like, man, that Chupacabra is fucking huge, dude. He's hella big. And that Big Ugly's fat. Like it was totally like they just totally did not know. And this was before I had all my ink and stuff, so you couldn't really tell. But that was one of the things that really allowed me to grow in those early years, because when I first started with SPW or took it over, I was the head guy, so I didn't have to answer to anybody. But having to do both characters allowed me to be able to work one style and have to do something totally different, and then come back later as Big Ugly and do something totally different. So I got to do like my high flying, my fucking hurricanranas and my fucking, the fucking head scissors and all that shit, and stuff off the top rope. And they come out as Big Ugly and be an asshole and hit hard and throw garbage cans and do all that crazy shit I was doing, So it allowed me to work two different styles on the show. And I tell people all the time, like, in my first year in the business, I had more matches than most guys did fucking for 5 years, because I was working two shows. Wherever I went, I would do two shows as both characters, Well, I worked hard to people would not know it was me on both. And there was battle royals, like Royal Rumbles I did, where I came out as one as Big Ugly, got left, came back out as fucking Chupacabra later on.
Well, that was always something. That was something that you ingrained in a couple of one of the many things that you ingrained in me was training. It's like you said, whenever you work a show, take a masked gimmick, and even if you're a masked wrestler like I was, you would say take another one. Take a jobber gimmick, as you say. So, and you would tell all of your students, when you start working, pack a mask gimmick, because they always need someone in there, an extra body to either lose or get thrown out of a battle royal. And the other thing that I specifically, I don't know if you remember it, I specifically remember from training, is you telling me that, like, listen, Flaco, you have a mask. People aren't going to see your face, so you've got to be extra animated with your arms and with your body, and every motion that you do has to mean something. And those are words that stuck with me for every single time I've been in that ring, whether I was a wrestler or even if I was cutting a promo, that since they can't see the face, they can only see a small portion of my face, I have to be extra animated, which I think that's why every professional wrestler should start off as a masked character.
Yeah,
what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's just the only issue I have with people doing that is, you'll get guys who are, and it fucking irks me, and I can only imagine what it does to luchadors, is when you have a white dude wearing a mask thinking he's a luchador.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you couldn't wear a mask and be an executioner, a fucking Texan, or fucking something else, but you don't have to say you're El Blanco fucking Latino or some shit like that. You're not a fucking white dude wearing a mask, but don't say you're a luchador, because you're not, because you're going to try to wrestle lucha, and first off, you're not an athlete.
Yeah.
Those guys are athletes, so I that's the only thing I struggle with, is when now people think, when people see guys in a mask, they right away think, oh, he's a Mexican wrestler.
Yeah. And
there's a whole other genre of, you fucking remember, we trained with the Destroyer at fucking Cauliflower that one year,
Yeah.
There's a guy who wear masks their whole fucking careers that are American guys, and they wrestle an American character. They're not a luchador, but that's kind of been the stigma with masked wrestlers, that you're a Mexican, that you're a luchador.
Yeah.
And these guys try to do them like, dude, you're not. You're not a lucha wrestler. Find something else, but yes, wear a mask, be fucking Kato or something, or something different where you can still wrestle your style, your moves as whatever your character is.
Yeah.
And guys don't do that enough. They always want to, I got a mask on, I'm going to be fucking El Taco Loco Choco or some shit. It's like, come on, bro. Like, like guys like you who've made a living off their mask, it's insulting. To me it is anyways.
Well, I don't know if I ever told you that, but Flaco was the nickname that I had as a kid.
That's what your dad called you, right?
Yeah, my dad called me Flaco, because I was the skinny one in the house. So Flaco, vente. And so that was my name. My dad either called me Danielito or Flaco. And so the Flaco Loco character, there's always a part of that that's a tribute to my father, and then seeing Neil Moskowitz for the very first time. Well, you know what? I think this is a great place to end it, because it's cool, because we haven't even scratched the surface on the Big Ugly character, really. We've talked about everything leading up to that. So I think, who knows? We might do part 2. We may not. Who knows? Yeah. But we're going to call it In the Ring, though. And I think if we do this again, it would be really interesting. You talked about the early days of Sacramento pro wrestling, because I went to that show. I went to that show that you were on, and to talk about that, about Mark Tornatore and the late Rich Roby. And I think that would be a great topic for another time. So it's cool, because I got to hear things that I didn't know about you. Like, I didn't know that that wrestling was something that brought you and your father together.
Yeah, and up until he passed, it was like, we had a lot of, obviously, he was into my life way more at that point,
Yeah.
I tell everybody, like, I don't watch, how emotional I get when I talk about certain things. And somebody who I was actually talking to DJ Riz's ex-wife today on the live chat, and it brought some tears to me, because I ran into her at a Denny's after a show at East Bay, just on a whim. Yeah. And I hadn't seen her like in 6-7 years, but I was talking to her today, and when you talk about people who were meant something to you in life, and they're not here anymore, it brings back that emotion, But everybody asks, like, who's your basketball, your NBA team? And it used to be the Lakers, but I tell everybody, like, I don't watch it anymore, because me and my dad, that's what we did. Like, we were both football fans, and he was the Lakers, Raiders, and Dodgers. Yeah. And that's the way I was raised, so we watched the Dodgers all the time, and I was never really into baseball at all. Yeah. But basketball and football were my things. But I remember us watching whenever the Lakers were in the playoffs, which at that time was every fucking year, winning championships, we'd always do it. He passed away, and I remember the next year they won the championship again. I was at my buddy's house, and he's a fan, and they won. And when my dad passed, like, he was sick, so we kind of got in. And I remember right when he passed, I walked out, and I yelled, and then that was it. I didn't cry anymore for it, Mm-hmm. But when he won, or when the Lakers won, I looked at my buddy, and I started bawling. And he's like, "Man, are you really that happy?" I was like, "No, it's thinking about my dad, know." And this is what we did together. And because I never want to have that emotion again, I stopped watching.
Wow.
I don't watch basketball anymore. And I remember me and Vinny did a show at the Forum years ago, and it was funny because it was the Cartel versus the Homies, which was Altar Boy Luke, who's a big movie star now, Little Cholo, Los Luchas, who Titus just wrestled Los Luchas, and the Young Bucks, but the other team. That's when Vinny created the Snoring Elbow. But I remember at one point we boom, I'm wrestling Cholo, and we do a spot, and then with the finish, he goes over on me, and I look up and I see Worthy, Johnson, fucking Kareem, and all these names. I'm thinking, holy shit, dude! Like, man, my dad would be so proud of me right now.
Well, you know what? That's what I like looking for symbolism. That's your dad looking down. And watch.
I was like,
that's your dad saying, "I hate it." It's like, yeah, you're losing this match, son.
But so that's that's part of like why I don't watch that anymore. But just stuff like that, man. Back in the days, I don't talk about a lot because of those things. But of course, for you, I'm going to open up. But everybody now wants to know about. Oh, you work with Roddy Piper, which is always a great story. But or they want to know like oh, you trained Timothy Thatcher or Johnny Morrison. I'm like, come on, man, those are like my kids, man. Like, everybody knows that. Like, what do you want? You want to know some fucking dirt?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and I know you emailed me saying, "Hey, Flock, you got questions?" I'm like, yeah, maybe, but like seriously, I don't have anything written down. I knew what I wanted to find out about you.
Yeah, I figured that.
So it's what's kind of cool is like hearing about how wrestling played a part in your childhood and your connection with your father, and how your mom, was a very generous move on your mom's part to allow your father back into your life, and to be honest, that how hard that was for her to like seeing your interest in wrestling. That's kind of hard for her to let go because she knows that's you being pulled towards him. But then like I know the real story. I remember being on all those matches where you're a bloody mess, and there's your mother and there's your father in the audience with the most concerned look on their faces. They're on opposite sides of the theater, but they're both parental, looking at their son in there. So I think like another topic for maybe even another interview is how you've taken on the other role, being the father, being the father figure for bringing wrestling into the lives of Salem and Titus, and maybe someday we might have a third member in that trio.
He's destined to be in wrestling like the other two. That wasn't their path at first. That was their backup plan. Into their path quick. And Bishop he's going to be a wrestler because he's meant to be a wrestler.
Well, I think that's for another interview for another time. So I don't know. What do you say? You want to bookend this?
How am I supposed to work out?
This is a workout. All right, there you go. And
you only turned 27 once, right?
I know, right? So there you go. So to everyone watching right now, if you haven't done it already, please get a drink right now. We're gonna salute the Big Ugly. We're gonna wish him a happy birthday. Boss, you brought so much to so many of our lives. I'm gonna try not to get emotional here, but you really opened up a wonderful world of professional wrestling. I thought the world of professional wrestling was wide open. You showed me that door was barely cracked, and you kicked it wide open for me. I've met some of the best people in my life, you being at the very top of that list as far as I'm concerned. So, boss, happy birthday to you. And to everyone watching, let's raise one for the Big Ugly J.D. Bishop. Take care, boss. Smooth.
Love you, brother.
I love you.
Well, there you have it. My interview with the Big Ugly on his birthday. Is it the last time I'm going to interview him? Only time will tell. Fans, stick around after a word from our sponsors, and I'll be here to tell you how you can be a guest in Flaco's Corner.
You can play it 6 different ways.
Some like to play at tic-tac-toe. Others can test their skill at Echo.
Some play a tune on Music Machine or try to play Blackjack 13.
Merlin is 6 electronic games in one. It's really fun for most everyone in the family. 6 penlight batteries not included.
With lights and sounds.
6 games in one.
Merlin's a game that's lots of fun.
Merlin, 6 electronic games in one. From Bucker Brothers.
Attention all wrestlers, managers, referees, ring announcers, promoters, fans. Would you like to be a guest on Flaco's Corner? It's real simple. All you have to do is pick up your phone, and wait for me to call you. That's right, don't call me, I'll call you.